Join Miranda and I so you too can support others' core values toward fulfillment and success. This is episode 9 of season 1, The Power of Purpose. I am Sam Henninger, the courage coach for executives, and your host. Here, you can learn to make tough decisions through emotional intelligence and collaboration, to grow outside of your comfort zone through humble self-awareness, and to love your life by being truly honest with yourself and others. Subscribe and share with your friend. We release new episodes every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Collaboration and trust. Mm-hmm. Yours is trust.
Yes.
We already talked about what trust means to me. But now, what is it? What is trust? Why is that a core value of yours?
Well, trust is a core value because it's a base for a good relationship. If you don't trust someone, or if you don't trust yourself, you can't have relationships.
I can't think of an argument against that. Yeah. How does it serve your other values?
Yeah. Well, that trust, it goes into everything. Whether it's trusting yourself or trusting others, going back to creativity, like that's a lot of trusting yourself to go through the process. When you have family, you have that trust of individuals in your family, but also of yourself to fill that role in your family. And you have to have the trust with all the individuals in your family as well as with yourself to fill that role within your family. You have faith, and faith is trusting in a higher power, but it's also like having that trust in yourself. Like there's elements of trust in everything, whether it's trusting others to fill their roles or trusting yourself to fill yours.
How do you trust yourself? What does that mean?
Well, it's trusting yourself. It's making a goal, whether it's big or small, and then making those steps to reach that goal. Whenever you trust yourself, you allow yourself to have that creativity to reach that goal, even if it wasn't a precise plan that you laid out. It's trusting yourself to use your adaptability to reach those goals, even if plans changed or if circumstances changed, and trusting yourself to know when to keep going, but also when to stop.
That has not been always easy for me.
Yeah.
Knowing when to pivot. In my experience, it's been difficult to know when to pivot because it feels like giving up sometimes.
And it can sometimes. And if you're always pivoting, then you're probably not trusting yourself or trusting the circumstance or trusting others that you're working with. So I think you need to look at what you're doing. Am I always pivoting? Am I always making that change? Or am I staying the course? But also, am I always staying the course when I shouldn't?
Yeah. When does steadfastness become stubbornness?
Yeah. And that takes practice, I think, to really figure out okay, am I doing this just because I said I was going to do this? And in some circumstances, yes, that's what you need to do. Having that trust, you have to build it up. It's not something that you're going to have overnight and it be effective. You have this element of looking at, is this course still the best course? And I think that's a key question to say. Whenever you're trying to determine which way you need to go and trusting yourself to make that best decision, an important question is this still the best course? Or do I need to change course?
How do you engage in that reevaluation?
It's important to, another thing that you're evaluating, sometimes you need to continue, sometimes you need to pause, and sometimes you just need to change. And I think to evaluate that, there does need to be a little bit of a hiccup to say, okay, do I continue on? In business, you probably already have processes for things to continue. And so you can evaluate, okay, well, is this the process that needs to continue? Do we need to pull back and change processes? And it comes down to like a pro and con list, usually, where you say, okay, well, here's the benefits and the downsides for staying the course. Things are constantly changing. That's how life and how business is. And looking at it and saying, are there improvements that need to be made to make the course that we're on still the best course? Or do we need to change directions? How quickly do we change directions? Is it a one fell swoop? Is it incrementally? What are the pros and cons of those?
That sounds very useful to me because I tend to be the visionary guy who envisions the future.
Mm-hmm.
I take a lot into account, but am susceptible to no longer accepting new information that would color my decision making as we go along. I need that.
Yes.
People like me need taking in the new information and checking against it.
And there is a point where you're just gathering information just to gather information. Mm-hmm. There is a balance to that where you have enough information to make that educated decision and where you're just are gathering information. A continuum where you have making decisions based off of what was offered first and making decisions that are based off of an educated, solid decision, and then waiting to make decisions until you have all of the information of all of the scenarios, of all of the chances. There's definitely that balance that you need to reach to say, okay, well, I'm making an educated decision and I trust myself that I've put in the research and the time to make the best educated decision as I can as quickly as possible. And that's the key, where you're not just sitting on your hands trying to get every little last piece of data, because you don't need that to make educated decisions and choices, but you do need something more than the first or second option that is presented.
So how does that turn into trust for you? Is it simply trial and error over time?
And I think so, because that's how trust is built, right? Mm. You look at kids and innately they just trust everything. And like we're innately trusting beings, partly because we have to. Like you look at a baby, the baby has to trust its caregivers. If it doesn't trust its caregivers, it's going to be constantly fighting against it. But also that trust is reinforced. Where they cry, they're picked up, they're fed, they're held, they're changed, they're cared for. And so that trust in their caregivers is reinforced. And then you see them growing and they reach a certain age where they start to not trust people who they don't know, but they trust the people that have been reinforcing their trust. And you go through this cycle of, okay, well, can I trust other people? And the more they experience other people, then they're like, okay, well, most people that I've interacted with are trustworthy. And then you get elements of, okay, well, maybe people are also not as trustworthy as I originally thought because mom and dad forgot to do the thing that they promised. And so now I don't trust whenever they say that they're going to do something. And the more we reinforce something, the more that is going to be the belief. And that's the same thing within ourselves. If we say, okay, well, I'm going to do that every day, and then we miss it on Tuesday, Thursday, and maybe do it sometimes on Saturday, and we start to trust and expect that of ourselves, where we'll do it maybe 50% of the time, but not all the time. And so that's where our level of trust is. It's like, okay, well, I kind of trust myself to do what I'm going to say versus if you do it all the time and maybe miss every now and then because life happens. you can say, okay, with good confidence that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of thing. And so it's something that builds over time, whether it's experiencing with other people or experiencing it within ourselves.
Let me challenge you with this idea because it gnaws at me sometimes. We talk about trust being such an important thing, and yet it seems that so many people have a underdeveloped or even naive idea of what trust means, because the saying goes, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a moment to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
That trust itself, it takes a long time to cultivate, but then people are all too willing to dash it when something goes against that image, that reputation.
And I think
doesn't it make it fragile?
I think it depends on what is happening.
Sure. Yeah.
Like if you look at a marriage and you like spend this lifetime of, or years or decades or however long of building that marriage, and then someone goes and they cheat on their spouse, then it's not just that instance of infidelity that is questioned, it's everything before that. Because if someone is in a happy and stable marriage, they're not going to go off with somebody else because they're getting all of their needs met in that relationship. But if the facade of everything is fine, we're fine, is put there, and then all of a sudden it's brought to light that there's another relationship, then the question is, well, how long have you been lying to me? And that's where it's dashed in an instance comes, because it brings into question everything that was trying to reinforce that trust before. In how long have you been lying to me? Yeah.
This is bringing to mind the story that I heard last year. The CFO of Bed Bath & Beyond, mm-hmm. It came out that the company was going to go under an audit, something like that. And he actually took his own life. He dumped out of his office or something like that and fell to his death.
Yikes.
And that makes me think about if the prospect of undergoing an audit for the CFO to be compelled to do something so drastic and heinous, it does call in the question, what was he hiding? What was going on? And I see that. And obviously that's a morbid and horrific example of what can happen. But when it comes to trust, I'm interested in what makes trust resilient. What would you say?
Well, and I think that comes down to the individual. What happens whenever trust is broken a little bit? If you make a mistake, are you hiding your mistake until someone finds it? Or when you make a mistake and you realize it, you go to the person that is involved or affected and say, hey, I made a mistake.
Be forthright.
This is what I'm doing to fix that mistake. And that's where trust is built, because people are human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to forget. We're going to be careless at some point. We're human. We're not robots. When we are proactive and forthright and admitting that we made a mistake and that something needs to change, and you already have a plan for what you're going to do to correct whatever the mistake was and whatever the fallout is, then I think that even builds trust more than never making a mistake.
Thinking of yourself as a leader, which you are, what does it take to cultivate that culture of being forthright and building trust?
I think a huge thing is not punishing mistakes.
That's what I was thinking too.
Especially not punishing mistakes whenever someone brings it to you. A lot of people, they've had it built into themselves I can't admit a mistake, especially at my job where mistakes are punished. But if you have a mistake or someone isn't reaching a criteria or something, you talk to them and say, hey, okay, what's going on? What external factors am I not aware of that is affecting your job performance? And have the employee or the manager, whoever it is that's having that struggle, talk with them and walk them through the process of how to resolve it. And then before that meeting is over, tell them, let me know when you're struggling, or let this person, like, it doesn't have to be the CEO that's talking to them. It doesn't, like, it could be a manager that's talking to them. But say, like, let this person know when you're struggling, or even when you're doing it, like, just check in with them with your status. When you find, like, when you can see that you're going to be behind, or if there's an external factor that's coming up, make a game plan, talk with that person, and be proactive and celebrate whenever people are proactive rather than if they are having a hard time punishing them for it. Because if you punish them, they're not going to speak up. And they're going to try and hide what's happening.
There's a mantra: there's nothing too small to celebrate, and there's nothing too big to forgive. And when I try to operate off of those assumptions, it makes things easier. It makes things more productive. We're wasting less time being emotional over things that end up not really mattering. And it becomes about ego instead of connection. I would say everything that you said. Another point on this is I've been on the other end where admitting a mistake doesn't result in retaliation or punishment per se. It's more subtle than that, where it does result in judgment, getting negative attention, by which I mean being singled out as the dumb kid, something like that, being treated as remedial or less than, getting attention that doesn't indicate you're doing a good job. It indicates I'm babysitting you now.
Yeah.
For someone that's wanting to set that pace and that culture, not punishing mistakes, being proactive and forthright, there's an art to it.
Yeah.
And there are egos too, and maybe you do everything right and someone still responds defensively and blows their top off. That is unfortunate too.
Well, but I think it takes time too.
Yeah.
Because whenever you have those people, it's been reinforced in them to act that way. And if you're wanting to change that culture, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, because that's not the culture of the business world.
Well, thinking about how applying this over time is a major component to this equation. How do you develop patience towards cultivating trust, whether within yourself or we're talking about with others in the workplace, but even broader than that?
I think it goes back to admitting fault and mistakes and making that game plan to change, taking those steps that are needed to change. As you see progress, celebrate the progress. And that's what's going to help build that patience, because you're going to see, okay, things are changing. Things are improving. It's not going to be here overnight, but we're not where we used to be. And going back and looking back at where you used to be and like taking that snapshot of, okay, well, this is what our company culture was. And this is where we are now. And this is where we want to be.
And you can apply that to family culture or individual self-concept. Like, this is how I would have treated myself before in a situation like this. I would have been beating myself up. I would have been hiding in a hole. Then, been really defensive. But now, taking care of a number of things in my life, and I can feel a lot more comfortable being upfront. about mistakes I made. And I think maybe we're hammering on mistakes a lot. I think that is a crucial part of trust. But it's also a very positive thing.
Yeah, I think a huge part of trust is what you do with the mistakes that you make and how you respond to them.
Yeah.
Are you hiding them? Are you working in the shadows? Or are you working in the light? Are you working where people can see what's happening? And not saying that you have to be 100% transparent in your business, because there does need to be a certain amount of
privacy, confidentiality.
And,
yeah, sure.
Is everything above board? And where if there were to be an audit, whether it's a financial audit or a cultural audit or whatever kind of audit.
An audit within your relationship with your spouse, or just a come to Jesus moment with yourself.
Right. Is everything going to be honest? Are you going to feel shameful for things coming to light because you weren't honest and trustworthy? And I think that goes back to integrity.
I was just going to say, from my point of view, courage and integrity, my number one and number two core values, this is music to my ears.
Yeah.
This is very important.
It takes courage to say, okay, I did do something that I'm not proud of, and this is how I'm going to fix it. Or I need help fixing it.
This is a perfect segue, because courage and integrity, it takes courage to even admit that it's a core value of mine. It exposes me, it opens me up to criticism, because we are all hypocrites. And so to call out courage and integrity as my core values makes me a target to be called out as a hypocrite, which I am. We all are. And I'm trying all that I can to cultivate that symmetry between my private and my public life.
Well, and I would also say that hypocrites are the ones that are hiding their mistakes, where they are putting this facade up saying, this is who I am, and I don't make mistakes with it, versus saying, this is who I aspire to be.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And I think maybe that's one of the big reasons why people have a tough time setting goals for themselves, because acknowledging that you're not all that you could be is exposing. It sets you as less than you know you could. That it could be a real gut punch and hard to deal with. And so I can see why people would avoid it. It's a hard thing to do.
You can have aspirations.
Yeah.
And work towards them and be dedicated to them. And that be something that is a core value to you, without saying, I'm less than that. And it comes back to having humility. It's okay for me to make mistakes. It's how I own my mistakes that matters. Yeah.
You had mentioned being able to recruit people into the process is really important. That I see as a segue into my value of collaboration. I have for too long, I mean, we talk about this, we talk about trust, courage, integrity. For too long, I see now, as I am a couple months into being 30, that I have lived a lot of my life in fear of judgment, and I've judged myself a lot, and I have leaned towards perfectionism, and it's kept me from establishing collaborations with other people, because I end up feeling like I have to be able to do everything on my own to be worthy of other people's attention, which is not true.
No,
it's not true. And in fact, being able to admit, I'm good at this. These are my natural talents. These are where my interests and my strengths are. Not so much in these other areas. When you get around other people whose natural talents and strengths are in areas of your weakness, it becomes much more obvious how I could sink 3 times as much time into their area of expertise and not be as good as they are.
Yeah.
Because it's natural to them. They're having fun. There's a great example.
I think it goes back to last episode where they found the element of fun.
Yes, exactly. That, well, I guess I'm forgetting the particulars of this example, but when it comes to athleticism, the person who has the genetics is going to have a one-up on other people unless the other people out-practice them. If somebody has the genetics and out-practices you, you're not going to have a good time. But if you're up against someone who has comparable genetics, practices just as hard as you do, but has more fun, you're not going to make it.
No.
You're not going to have the longevity or the ability to
surpass them.
Yeah. When it comes to collaboration as a core value of mine, at this point, I would see it as it is natural to me. I would rather be working within a team and influencing people and helping guide the work within that. So I'm not a solopreneur per se because I have you, but a lot of what's going on right now does fall on me. And I would much rather, and maybe I'll, eat my shoe when it comes to this point, but I definitely have the feeling that I would much rather manage people whose strengths are not where mine are, manage a team, than to try to do everything myself.
Mm-hmm.
Collaboration is the effective use of everyone's energy and talents. And having the skill to influence that is the essence of leadership. Mm-hmm. I think it was Dwight D. Eisenhower who has a quote, "Leadership is the art of getting other people to do what you need them, but they want to do it." That's the art of leadership.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people who can compel people to do work. Yeah. There's plenty of leaders like that. But to do it artfully means to communicate it in a way where they want to do it. Yeah. That's where my strengths are.
Well, and it's bringing people on board with your vision.
Yes, exactly.
And helping them catch at least a portion of that vision.
Well, and so much of collaboration is the humility to accept this business or this department. It's my baby, mm-hmm. right? This is mine. I take ownership of this. And mm-hmm. there's so much power in taking psychological ownership over something. Mm-hmm. But collaboration requires the humility to say that if it's going to continue to grow, if it's going to continue to flourish, it needs more than just me. Mm-hmm. I need other people to actively contribute to the vision. It grows beyond me. And maybe you say, that's easy for me to say because I have yet to be a part of a growth startup phase of a business. But in principle, I see the value in expressing humility enough to let things go and let other people take the wheel when you need to.
Yeah. Well, and allowing them to have their own vision.
Yeah.
And the key is that their vision needs to coordinate. Mm. Their vision needs to still be able to get the group to the same location. If someone's vision in the group is going west instead of east, they're not going to help the group get to where the group wants to go.
Well, and I actually appreciate that metaphor because we're talking about very core ideas, motivations, and principles. When it comes to tactics, strategy, those are closer to the surface than those core principles. And those are plenty up for debate.
Right.
But what becomes decreasingly negotiable is core motivations with people, what they truly need. And when you are in a management team or growing a business, there will come a point where you have that opportunity to make sure we are consistently, regularly aligning ourselves with what's going on, that we together are choosing to put our heads and our hearts toward solving this next big issue or whatever. And so there's plenty of times to check in and make sure that things are aligned because you might be aligned and feel like, wow, we got this perfect synergy. me and the team, me and this particular partner. But then over time, it strays. Mm-hmm. So I think relating it back to trust, it takes that time and repeated events where you get to express it.
Well, and I think also the bigger the organization gets, the harder it can be to keep that vision from the top down. Because the further removed from the original person with the vision, the smaller portion of that vision they have. Like you think of any big company and the CEO's vision is very different than the entry-level employee. But the key that you want to have is the entry-level position's vision, their purpose of their job, is that getting the company to the grand vision.
And that's, I see as the great puzzle of leadership, because you're right, your influence can only go so far. So the top dog, CEO, whatever, of the organization, I see their job as exercising the most influence over their management team and making sure that everything is harmonized, synchronized in there, and empowering those people 1 degree out from you to do the same with their direct reports and on down. The issue then becomes interest groups start popping up, and they might be, one department might be clear on a vision, but then it becomes conflicting with another group. So what needs to happen is a constant communication back and forth, understand who needs what, why, what are the motivations, and knitting hearts and minds together again. That is the purpose I see of leadership and management, is making sure that hearts and minds are knit together.
Yep. And purposes, I would add to that. And because if your company is going in 5 different directions, then you're not going to meet the goals that you're wanting to. You're not going to reach that vision to its fullest potential because everyone is pulling in different directions. Think back to a little exercise our oldest son they did in his gymnastics class where there's like 5 different kids and they put them in like a hula hoop or like some like loop sort of thing, not a hula hoop because that would have been too small, but like they put them in like this fabric loop. Okay. And then there was candy scattered around the room and then they were told to just run. And
I can imagine that not working out well.
Well, and he's probably the biggest kid in his class because he's tall, and the others were mainly girls. And so he's like dragging them around this room, gathering all the candy that he can. And because that was his vision. And it's the same thing within a company where you're all tied together.
Yeah.
And whoever is the strongest and has the most passion, they're going to pull everyone else. And whether they like it or not.
Right.
And so like that is important to keep in mind. Like who are the strong leaders? Who has the most power?
Yeah.
And where do we want them? And what goal do we want them going after?
I think that's, again, this all comes down to the art of leadership because it's about managing that power, that influence that people have. It would be simple enough for me to say in one scenario, for example, if you have that big, strong, loud personality, they're just dragging the organization wherever they need to. You start developing this relationship where, okay, well, he's just going to do whatever he wants. And then that personality is stuck thinking everyone but me is dead weight, which effectively is what's happening.
Right.
And so being able to understand what's really going on and craft opportunities and roles where you aren't stamping out the person who has the most energy and the biggest personality, but you're channeling all of that influence in a way that's healthy.
Right.
So that people aren't left feeling like they're dead weight. And because when you get to that point, no one's collaborating.
No.
Everyone's out for themselves. Because what's being communicated is whoever's the loudest gets what they want. And I'm not going to fight that fight. So I'm just going to take what I can silently. And that doesn't make for a great experience.
No, it makes for a terrible experience for everyone involved. You don't build that collaboration or camaraderie that is needed within the workforce to make it a productive and enjoyable place to be.
Mm-hmm. Collaboration has everything to do with me being humble enough to admit I can't do everything on my own. I don't even want to. Recognizing the strengths and talents and interests of others is really powerful towards getting where I want to go. One of the common conundrums that company founders face is when they start finding success, when they start to scale, they need more capital. So they start making deals, often selling off equity. Recently, people are getting more shy about that, getting more sophisticated about how they develop terms around equity and all that. But the idea is the founder, in the effort to grow the business as quickly and effectively as they can, sells off pieces of it so that they literally have less ownership over the business that they started. That can be very transactional. It can be, hey, that's just business kind of deal. But I would like to think in the most positive of terms, when we are bringing on partners, we're bringing on employees, all of these things, every relationship, whatever the terms might be, it comes down to I am including more people in on this because I need them. And they are interested in me. They need me too. And so understanding where the win-win circumstances are for every relationship, I think is really important because I've spent so long thinking I have to do it all myself.
Yeah.
So I deeply value collaboration because it allows us to do more of what we love and less of what we don't like. And it still gets done. And it even gets done better than we could have done ourselves.
Because it's being done by someone who loves it.
Yeah. And so being able to find those people, attract the talent, and retain the talent, all of that adds up to fun, success, and growth.
Yeah.
That's what so much of life is about, isn't it?
And I think it also goes back into that trust where you have to trust those individuals to do what they say and have demonstrated that they can.
Yeah. And I sort of wince at the common saying of hire slow and fire fast, because that to me goes back to trust being fragile. And if it's fragile that you make one mistake, you're gone. And what is it really worth? It seems like you don't actually trust me. It calls into question the person who says they trust. I think it's really important to examine yourself and see, what does trust actually mean? Do I actually trust people, or do I just say it until they hurt my feelings or make a mistake? And then suddenly I overreact and retaliate.
And I think there needs to be a balance within that hiring process, and as well as letting people go, where sometimes they just need to go. Sometimes you just need people to fill a seat. I think you need to look at what the greatest need is.
Yeah.
Like, do you just need a body and a chair? Then it doesn't matter who you hire, because they're going to be a body and a chair.
Yeah.
Or do you need someone that you can trust, that has already demonstrated trust in other ways to other people that can carry over?
No, that's a good point. Different roles have different levels of criticality. I think what it all comes down to, is being willing to have those conversations. And I'm reminded of that really big YouTuber, Mr. Beast. I don't think I've ever watched a video of his, but he has hundreds of millions of subscribers. He's making millions upon millions of dollars, and he does some really cool, generous things in his videos. A lot of really philanthropic with his time and his resources. He was asked in an interview basically what his hiring and firing process looks like. Like, what is it like for him as a business owner, as a CEO, to have to fire people? And his response was, he basically shrugged and he's like, I feel like there was never any hard feelings with people having to leave the team, because I tell them, who do you want to work for? And I'll make the connection. And so being very open and willing to bridge the gap, I think, is something that I aspire to. I know that there are plenty of complications, plenty of security measures that need to be taken by an organization to make sure that things remain contained,
right?
So that trade secrets and things like that get exposed, and the employee doesn't retaliate sending a company-wide email. Right. So I understand that there's plenty of HR security measures that need to be accounted for, but to approach it, broadly speaking, with the attitude of, it's not working out here, here's severance, here, whatever, depending on the situation, maybe they flat out get fired, but to approach it with a sense of generosity and let's make this best of both worlds for both parties, because it's not going to make sense for us to keep you around
if you don't want to be there.
If you don't want to be here, if you're not able to do what needs to be done. So let's help you find someplace that would give you a better shot at that and really help facilitate that. I do think that that's the responsibility of a business, to help people who are leaving to find a better way. I don't know, maybe my ideas will mature as we go along, but
and I think there does need to be a balance to that. Yeah. Where, and I think scale of the company also has to do with that, and what level of employee someone is.
Sure.
If it's a large company and an entry-level position, there's not going to be the resources to say, okay, well, here's a better fit for you. But if you're high up in leadership, then there would be better resources for that. So there's a continuum of that.
There's definitely a spectrum.
And if you're a small company, you have a better idea of what people's skill sets are. Yeah. And so you can be more apt to say, okay, well, I can put in a good word. You can still have that camaraderie or reciprocity by, if you are that big company, writing a reference letter saying, these are some qualities that would make them a good hire for a position.
Yeah.
And
I think people can do a lot better. Companies can do a lot better than the vague, social media posts, they're on to bigger and better things, kind of no, you fired them. That's what's actually happening. You can do more than that.
And sometimes it can be a mutual decision.
Yeah.
Where it's not a good fit. There's things that companies can do to make it easier for the employee leaving to get a job.
And so going back, just to start wrapping things up, that saying, hire slow, fire fast. I think for me, the answer in making that doable for my sense of integrity is, taking your time to see
our visions aligned.
But the fire fast piece, I would feel more comfortable firing fast when there was a process in place that I felt still honored my sense of integrity, instead of, you made a mistake, you're gone, kind of thing. That just doesn't sit well with me. And this comes down to personal preference, I suppose. You have to really think about this.
Well, I think it also depends on a few different things, like the industry and the scope of what happened. If you're in the medical industry and you made a mistake that cost people lives, there's something there.
I'm speaking very broadly about these things. Yeah.
If you're in something where the mistake that was made is a ripple that doesn't really do a whole lot, maybe, it does affect a lot of people, but in the grand scope of things, it's not a big deal. If those are the reasons why you're firing fast, then that's what needs to be evaluated.
Yeah. How can I help you more fully live your core value of trust?
Just continuing to be someone trustworthy. helping me and our kids to build those relationships on trust and helping them understand like what trust is. I feel really strongly that helping the younger generations have those foundations of trust and knowing how to build trust and demonstrate being trustworthy to other people, even in the presence of mistakes, then that is going to be what changes our culture in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's definitely a part of my life mission, to be that. Mm-hmm. And again, it can be daunting to accept that as part of your life mission, to be trustworthy, because there are going to be times where you break trust. But like you said, it comes back down to how do you deal with mistakes? That says a lot about what trust means to you.
Well, and that's something that's going to build trust more or break trust.
Sure.
Like that's like whenever mistakes happen, that's when trust is built or broken.
Mm. Okay. I can do that.
How can I better help support the collaboration for you?
While we are both introverts, neither of us are.
So much so that we don't talk to people.
Yeah, I know. Like that said, you are just another person who is in my local network. You can be another basically antenna for me to be aware of who's around, what events are going on, who we can go see, who we can help, things like that. So being another set of eyes and ears to help me recognize where we can help, where we can collaborate with others, that would be very useful to me, because I only have so much energy to seek people out and try to nurture those connections. So having someone else there with me on the same mission is extremely valuable.
Awesome. We can do that.
Okay. Well, I'm Sam, the Courage Coach for Executives.
And I'm Miranda.
Remember, it starts with you. Studies have shown that your brain's ability to successfully convert new information into knowledge that sticks with you can be multiplied 10 to 20 times when a session of learning is concluded with reflection. If you're able, please join me for a few minutes of personal integration. I will close my eyes, inhale through my nose, and exhale through my mouth. I'm thinking of the impressions I received during this episode, connecting new ideas to facts and experiences I already have, and then allowing myself to focus back to the present moment. I'm grateful to have spent this time with you. The music will play us out. Thank you for joining in the journey.